Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I'd do a little different discussion about my overall health journey, and that's more down the training aspect of my journey. So my training and my exercise routine really falls into two groups: cardio and resistance training. For cardio, I don't do intense cardio. I find that the fatigue or just the systemic fatigue that I have from the weightlifting doesn't really allot for a lot of time for me to do a lot of high intensity cardio. So I mainly focus on my cardio in terms of low impact, but active. So things like taking brisk walks. And so I can do a mile walk in about 16 minutes flat. So not too bad. It's pretty good. My heart rate stays in the 100 and 110 range when I do that. Lately, it's been a little higher, but I gave blood about 4 days ago, and I think I'm still recovering from that. I need to do some more research on this, but I think that had a bigger impact on me than I thought it would. But I digress. So I do that about every morning. I walk anywhere between a mile to 2 miles, depending on kind of how I'm feeling. So I kind of depict, how much I'm going to walk at what pace, that kind of thing, based on what I train, what I'm going to train that day, and then what I trained the day before. And really, it's a balancing act. What I'm trying to do is balance out the amount of fatigue and recovery that I'm trying to get for my next workout. That's really kind of what I'm thinking about. So that's kind of the cardio piece. When it comes to resistance training, I do a lot of weights. I do a lot of weight training, and that's both free weights and machines. I do kind of a mix. It just depends on what I'm trying to do. But I do go to the gym. I also have a little gym in my garage that it's just too hot to use right now. It's in Texas, and I just get way too dehydrated. So I go to the gym where there's some air conditioning, and I work out there. So I've been doing this kind of combination, if you will, for the last, it's almost been 10 months. Like I started this whole fitness journey of mine at the end of September of last year. So we're getting into almost a year anniversary, and it's pretty hard to believe. At the very beginning, I knew what I was doing from a weight training perspective or strength training perspective, because I've lifted weights pretty much my whole life off and on. I wouldn't say I've ever been this consistent. But there were times where I had some consistency. I remember, in junior high, that would be in the 7th and 8th grade and 9th grade. I would lift weights as part of the athletic club at school. I was not very strong. I couldn't bench press a whole lot. My legs were always a lot stronger than my upper body. Never had a big physique or anything like that. I'm just kind of a smaller framed person. So, it is what it is. In high school, I hardly did any strength training. I was in marching band and band and stuff. So I was active, but I wasn't doing any strength training. Outside of high school, though, into college, I started to kind of pick it up again. I started working with a trainer. That trainer, and basically, it's funny, the way they picked that trainer for me was I said, I want to get as big as I can. Because that's what I grew up on, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers and all these huge guys. And I wanted to look like that. So they picked this trainer for me, and this guy was absolutely a beast. I mean, he was huge. I can't picture him completely because it was 20 something years ago, but I just remember his legs. I mean, he was doing 405 pounds on bench press for reps, 6 to 8 reps. He was doing about 1,000-pound leg press for reps. I mean, this guy, and he was huge, just a huge guy. And I just remember I was like, that's the guy I want to train with. So I worked out with him, ended up getting a hernia. That was pretty interesting. Not his fault. When somebody pushes me, I go and even I can push myself to probably pretty dangerous things when it comes to intensity. So I've had to really learn how to not do that. And hernia surgery was not cool. But anyway, I digress. I can tell that story one day, but luckily I was young when I got it fixed. But then I started working out with one of my brother's friends, who's a great guy. I still kind of keep in contact with him, but he and I had a lot of fun. I mean, I think that was probably the most foundational training I had, was because I was essentially getting to work out with somebody who had been probably training for 10 years. He was in his couple years older than me. So he'd probably been lifting since he was 12. I don't really know for a fact, but a very built dude, et cetera. So it kind of gave me a kind of a goal to shoot for. And he taught me a lot of different things around intensity and training and eating and things like that. So I have a good foundation, but I just hadn't practiced it in a while. And so when I started, in October lifting weights, I kind of went back to that same routine of training. And, there's a lot of information out there about strength training and hypertrophy, things like, what's the ideal rep range? How many sets should you do? What kind of body part or what kind of machines or exercises should you do for each body part, et cetera. There's a lot of information. It's easy to get overwhelmed. So I really needed something. It kind of took me a while to kind of get into a groove to where I could kind of start to feel like, yeah, okay, when I do this specific exercise, it feels the best to me. So, or this machine specifically, I can really feel it. And there are body parts that I have that I can feel when I work out really well. Mind muscle connection, they call that. And there's some that I can't feel very well at all. Even still, after almost a year really of consistently strength training, resistance training. As I've kind of progressed through this, I started getting to the point to where I was just doing entirely too much volume. Like you could see essentially as I was working out, like the volume and volume meaning like the number of sets and the amount of weight and the amount of reps, kind of all those added together is the total volume of what I was lifting. It just keeps going up and up and up and up. And even that was before getting on testosterone replacement therapy. And then it even spiked harder because I found that I could do a lot more weight and things now that I'm on testosterone. And so what I started to notice was that my fatigue levels, it was very hard for me to recover. I started to have some joint pains in my shoulder. I talked about my AC joint getting a little sore. That's mainly healed now. But my tennis elbow in this left forearm is still very touchy. And also my elbow joint itself, tricep press downs and things are tough for me to do without a little bit of pain. So definitely like some of the volume is starting to bite me a little bit. And so I really needed something to start to regulate the way I work out and really I'm a data person, as you probably know by now. I like data. I want to get as much data and look at data trends to analyze, how to make changes, because otherwise I feel like I'm just making changes based on, the feeling at the time, which isn't really relevant when it comes to like last week or week before. I can't even remember how I felt then. So I needed a program, really. I needed some kind of programming. And I thought I had that. I was using the Heavy app to HEVY is the app I was using to kind of plan out my workouts. And I was doing a typical bro split, if you will. Like I would do chest and triceps, back and biceps and legs. And then I would split out arms sometimes. I did a lot of experimentation, and I was tracking like how many reps, how many sets I was doing, how much weight I was doing. And I was trying to progressively overload that every week, whether that's add a rep here or add a little weight there, etc. And while that was fine and all, I don't know. I just felt like there needed to be more structure than that. I needed something to kind of guide me a little bit more, especially to hold me a little bit back from, pushing too far, because that was the problem. I think I was lifting too much volume. And so I started kind of going out there and looking for things. And one place I kind of settled in on and I'm using currently is something called the RP Hypertrophy app by Renaissance Periodization, or RP. It's a application that was written by that team, basically backed by Dr. Mike Israetel. And I'm not endorsed by them. I'm not, sponsored by them or anything like that. It's just one app that seemed to be a very scientific approach and data approach to lifting. And so I've been using that for about 8 weeks now. And essentially it organizes things in things called mesocycles, where you have a group of time or a time period that you set, and you say how many times you want to go to the gym every week. You also talk about how long you want it to be in duration. They have sample programs and templates. So I just used a template for 6x6. So 6 days a week for 6 weeks. That's 5 weeks of increasingly intense strength training, followed by a sixth week, a 1 week deload, meaning you half everything, half the weight, half the reps, half the sets, pretty much. And I don't know. I feel like I made some pretty good progress in the last 6 weeks. I will tell you by the fifth week, when I got into the fifth week, I wanted to die. Like that app pushed me to the limit, to my limits. I feel like I also feel like it was my fault for picking 6 days a week. I think that is to try to train at 47 years old with high intensity 6 days a week when you've just only really kind of still a newbie. I mean, I've only been training solidly consistently for 10 months. So that's not very long. There's guys out there that have been training 20 plus years like that. So they can probably take a lot more than that. Um, but I'll tell you, I was ready for that deload week. And then the deload week came when I was traveling. So I don't know how much recovery I got done in there, but I definitely backed off the loads, and I think that helped. I backed off the volume, and I think that really helped. So, what I wanted to do is kind of take you into that app and show you kind of what I've been doing for the last 6 weeks, and walk through, some different ways the app works and things like that. And this is it's mainly just my experience with the app. I'm not telling you have to use it. In fact, for somebody that's just starting out in their fitness journey, this is probably way overkill. Like, I would concentrate more on your eating, your sleeping, and also just getting consistent with some kind of exercise. But if your goal is to do a lot of resistance training and hypertrophy and build muscle mass, I think this app would really help you. There are some problems with it. There are some little quirks and things like that. And the fact that it's not really a mobile app, it's a web app, really. It gets a little funky when connectivity sucks and things. So there's some quirks to it. But all in all, what I liked about it was that it gave me a really good structure around my workouts, so that I can, progress through a training program, take a break, and then go more. So it's both kind of restricting me a little bit from killing myself and also helping me progress based on other variables. And I'll show you in the app kind of what those variables are, like joint pain, fatigue, things like that. So without further ado, let's check out the app so that you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's cut over to the app. All right. So this is the RP Hypertrophy app. It says beta, but it seems like it's been in beta for a really long time, but I've been using it, I think, for about the last 6 or 7 weeks, I would say. Probably a little bit longer, but there's a reason for that. And so it's basically broken up into a very scientific method of training, which is called mesocycles. So it's like, think of them as like these training blocks, if you will, where essentially you're focusing in on maybe certain body parts or maybe your whole body, and it's getting harder and harder every week. And then it ends with what's called a deload, which is a week where you give your body a chance to rest and recover. So what I was doing as my first mesocycle, I was focusing on back and biceps. I felt like my back was it's kind of okay. Like I wanted to get that V taper look. So I wanted to grow my lats out, things like that. And then my biceps have always been a little chinsy, in my opinion. My triceps are probably an area where I feel like I'm a little bit more genetically gifted. But in my bicep, though, I mean, you just see people that just have these awesome peaks to their bicep. They're real tall. Not much I think I can do about my peak, but as far as the overall like size of my bicep, that was something that I wanted to focus on. So I picked those two muscle groups to kind of start my first mesocycle. And the the one thing about the mesocycle that I would say is I think I went a little too aggressive on this mesocycle. Uh, and why do I mean by that? Well, I chose a 6x6. So you notice I said I want it to be 6 weeks and I want to train 6 days a week. 6 days a week for me, I think is too much. For a 20-year-old kid or something like that, or a 22, or maybe even a 28-year-old kid, or if you're on like just a mega amount of drugs, maybe 6 days a week is okay. Or if you train with less intensity, 6 days a week is probably okay. But by the time I got to the fifth week of this mesocycle, I wanted to die. Like I was in bad shape. And I'm also using a fatigue system called Morpheus to track my fatigue as well and my recovery using what's called HRV, or heart rate variability. It's really fascinating stuff, and I'll do a whole different video on that. And what'll be interesting is I'll overlay this mesocycle on top of the Morpheus data, and you'll see as I progress through the mesocycle, my fatigue got higher and higher and higher. Because that's one thing about me, I think that's a little bit tough, is that uh, I tend to overtrain. Like I push too hard. And that's true kind of with everything I do, is I kind of go way too far in. So I need some kind of check and balance to tell me, okay, you need a break, dude. Because I just, that's not in my programming. So anyway, okay, so let's go into this mesocycle so that you can see what I'm talking about here. And so it's broken up into 6 weeks, and with a deload in the sixth week. So, and you can see it gets progressively harder as you go. So the first week, it makes you shoot for 3 reps in reserve, meaning you need to come within 3 reps of total muscular failure, and that's hard. Like that muscular failure and achieving that is easier in some muscle groups, I feel like, than it is others for me. For example, like I can get to failure pretty good, like on my biceps and triceps and things, but when it comes to like compound movements like squats or leg press, getting to muscular failure for me is tough. It can be a little scary. I mean, you've got, especially on like a leg press, you've got like 300 pounds on this sled that's coming at you. And if you fail, like it's not going to crush you, but I think in your mind, you're like, this is going to kill me if I let this go. There's safeties and stuff, yeah, but it's still kind of scary. So, and the pain involved usually in leg going to failure on leg training is extremely difficult. But, you do your best, as long as you're kind of pushing the intensity, that's what they call the intensity, then I think you can achieve it. So, this was kind of my training. So, like, this is the way it started. So, for week 1 on day 1, I did like 2 sets of assisted pull-ups. So that's a back focused exercise. And you can kind of see it's reflected in the training of what I wanted to focus on. So it's like back and biceps, right? Now you might notice like, okay, well, why is there only one bicep exercise? Well, your body can really only take so much stimulus in one day, right? So this is a back focused day. But then if you go to the next day, you'll notice it kind of flips the script and now it's focusing on bicep, still does 1 set of back, and then does some accessory or secondary work like shoulders. Um, and that just kind of progresses. And so you'll see it's logging how many reps I did. And then what's interesting about this app is it's just not just a log, but it also adapts too. So let's go to the mesocycle that I currently just started, which I'm really excited. I've been doing a deload for a week now. And I got to tell you, after training 5 weeks or even before that, training to failure and really pushing it, when you do a deload, you kind of feel like you're slacking a little bit, like deload is usually within 8 reps of failure. So you're kind of like, you're doing your sets and then you probably have 8 left, but then you just kind of give up. That's very counterintuitive to somebody like me who likes to push kind of past, a lot of fatigue and really challenge myself. So I felt a little like a loser for the last week, but um, just looking at my metrics of fatigue, I needed it for sure. When you go into so this is going to be my new mesocycle. I chose 5 by 5, meaning 5 weeks of duration. So if that's 4 weeks of intensity with 1 week of deload, and then 5 days a week. And I did that because I want to focus on um, legs and chest, specifically quads, hamstrings, and chest. So those are big muscle groups, especially the legs. So I needed to cut it down. 5 might still be too aggressive. We shall see. But I just chose 5 because honestly, I get kind of grumpy when I don't go to the gym. Ask my wife; she knows what's up. So first it says, hey, you need to try to get within 3 RIR. Here is what they want you to target for. So let's say, for example, for leg extension, I kind of already know that at 70 pounds, I can probably do about 15 reps. Okay. So let's just log the set. And then let's say that I do 15 on this one too. Now, what you'll notice is it comes in after you do that, it asks you about joint pain. And so it starts to ask you these questions about like how you're feeling, how did that set feel, how did, soreness, things like that. And it's all feeding into this proprietary algorithm they have to adjust the training. And so a week to week, and it gets real mad at you when you start doing stuff like that. But week to week, it adjusts how much weight you do and how many reps you do, and even how many sets you do, I think. Um, I don't have access to the algorithm, that's proprietary, but I could see it adjusting as I went up. So like if you look at This is a good example. So like for back on assisted pull-up, I started with 140 pounds for 12, and then I was like, that's kind of easy. Let me go 130 for 14. So I was just kind of getting started. I feel like I kind of screwed this one up. But if I look at like the next one, look at that. So in the second week, it was like, okay, I'm going to have you do 22 reps with 140 pounds of assistance. And then I try to hit it. And then this indicates whether I hit my goal or not. But you can see as we go, like it's slowly increasing the intensity. So it's adding reps, continuing to add reps. And then, yeah, look at that. So by the time I was done in my 5th week, I could do 30 pull-ups of 140 pounds um, to start. And if you look back at 140 pounds, I could only do 12. So that's quite a steep progression as to what I was able to accomplish. Now, some of that may have been that I bailed out early, but I don't think so. I remember 140 pounds doing 12 after warm up, of course, doing 12 very strict assisted pull ups. And when I say very strict, I mean all the way up, slow eccentric for 2 to 3 seconds with a full stretch, meaning that I try to feel like my lats are going to rip in half when I basically go to the full stretch. So these are not, quick, little easy ones. Like I am very strict about my form, my tempo, and then also my mind muscle connection. I really try to think about pulling with my lats. And anyway, we can have a whole video on that. And there's tons of stuff out there on YouTube on that. But when I put in 12 reps, these weren't half reps. These were full reps. I do not count half reps. I will do half reps or partial reps in a lengthened position, but I don't count them because they are not full reps. I only count full reps here to keep the consistency. But yeah, I'll tell you, man, by the time I got to week 5, so this is week 5 is 0 reps in reserve, as you see here. That means every set will go to failure. And I was dying. Like I did this one in the gym in Seattle, and you can see this is a lot of volume, like 15-pound dumbbell lateral raises, strict lateral raises for 16, 13, and 10. My shoulders were on fire. And then, after that, let's blast the rear delts, so like, this was a very intense program. And I will tell you, like, my one regret is I didn't measure anything. I didn't measure like my back or my biceps or anything like that. I kind of wish I would have. But I'll tell you, like, my strength went up definitely. But you can see the fatigue actually started kind of getting me a little bit in this last week. Notice on the dumbbell bent lateral raises, I missed every one. So the target was probably like 18 or 19. I didn't make it. So the fatigue was getting pretty intense here. Looks like I beat leg extension, but my legs have come a long way. But yeah, I missed on calves. So like the fatigue was kind of starting to really set in. And if you overlay, like I said, the Morpheus data on this, you can definitely see a major decline in my heart rate variability. So anyway, so that's the hypertrophy app. So I'm going to start my next mesocycle of chest and legs today, which I'm really looking forward to getting started on a new muscle group. I'm still going to train all the other muscle groups too. Like if you look at day 2, that's kind of my secondary work. So I start out with my secondary or my second primary, which is chest. But then all the secondary stuff is going to be like my triceps. I'm moving back to secondary because I just don't feel like I could train intense, large muscles intensely multiple times a week. I'm 47 years old. I can't recover from that anymore. So anyway, I'm looking forward to this, and I'll kind of show it. I am going to take measurements this time. So I'm going to measure my quad and my hamstring, like the whole kind of rig there. I'll measure that, and I'll put it in here and just kind of track that. I'm also eating in a well, here so anyway, I'm going to measure. I'm going to put it in the app, and then we'll see if I actually grow a little bit of muscle. And then by the time I finish this up, it might be time for another DEXA scan. So I might do that. But yeah, let's cut out of this and let's kind of wrap things up. All right, so that's a kind of a look into my training protocol that I use. So I use that app to kind of structure my training a bit more and just give me goals to shoot for every time I work out. I just find like a lot more structure really does help in my training personally. Where do we go from here? So I'll finish that up. I'll do my measurements, but I'll tell you, like, I I feel a lot better now. I was feeling pretty awful during the deload week. I was beat up. Like my joints were kind of hurting. I was feeling and then just overall fatigue. I was just feeling it really bad. So I backed my cardio off a little bit. I'm also eating more too. So I think if I take a look at my the app that I use for tracking my macros, I'm eating 2,600 calories or almost 2,700 calories a day now. And that's important to do while you're trying to build muscle, right? Because you want to try to add tissue. And to add tissue, you need to be eating in a calorie surplus. And I'm watching my weight too. So now I'm about 181 pounds. So I've gained about a pound, which unfortunately is not enough for the kind of training I was doing. Technically, I should have probably been trying to aim for half a pound a week while I was doing that that progressive overload mesocycle. But I'm also, I think I'm still a little gun shy, right, about relapsing and gaining a bunch more weight and stuff. So I think I just kind of undershot it a little bit. I also think my metabolism must be more efficient or faster or something, combined with like the TRT, the fat loss, and more muscle. I think that's really upped the number of calories that I can eat. So, what I would say to you is if you're just starting out, like it gets easier. Like, yeah, you're going to plateau and stuff like that. But like 9-10 months in, you may find yourself like, hey, it's time for me to eat at kind of a surplus for a little bit, maybe try to add a little bit of muscle. And that's pretty cool. You get to add, sprinkle in a little bit more food. You get to have a little bit more cheat meals, things like that. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel there for you. Keep up the great work. I know you can do it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.